Hello, you get glitter stitches, and I get glitter stitches, and our projects get glitter stitches. Okay, I'm the Knitting Fairy Godmother. I'm so glad that you're here today. All right, let's talk about our book club. Today we're talking about Mindful Thoughts for Makers, Connecting Head, Hearts, and Hands by Ellie Beck. Today we're talking about learning slowly and patiently, and this is my jam. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of these ideas, I would like to invite you to my weekly knit letter where I share knitting tips, tools, and lots of glitter stitches delivered right to your inbox every week. I only talk about knitting because that's all that I think about. If you would like to get my knit letter, you can sign up and join, link in bio, or on my website, knittingfairygodmother.com. Okay, we are on page 59, and the topic is learning slowly and patiently. And I want to show this image because it's an embroidery hoop of fabric, and then the motif is an hourglass, and the stitches are the sands of the hourglass. So the sand represents the time that it takes to create whatever we make. And for me, that making is my knitting. Learning slowly and patiently. So over the course of my life, slow learning is my default. That's how my brain is wired. That is how I learn. That is how I learn best. And talk about an uncomfortable formal education experience. I failed a lot of classes. I had to do a lot of practice. But as an adult, realizing that I have a different pace, my pace is slower than a lot of people's learning processes, I can accept that and I can work around that personally. I've developed lots of tools and techniques to help myself set myself up for success when I'm learning something. And the topic is learning slowly and learning patiently. And part of having an inherent slow learning process is that there is no instant gratification, and it's all about collecting the pieces of the puzzle that fit together and having the patience that every piece contributes to the final picture, and that it's just a matter of getting all of the pieces together to see the whole final picture. And that requires patience and, in my case, faith. Because it doesn't happen quickly, and there's a long period of time where things don't make sense. It's just like when you're doing a jigsaw puzzle. And that's how I think about learning, is that I'm collecting all of my pieces and getting them organized and trying to fit them together. And then finally, eventually, I have an image. So one of the ways that we do that is by focusing on the present moment. And that's something that I have had to experiment with and practice. For me, the present moment, I learn best in a quiet setting. I learn best with books. If I add a screen, it's cause for distraction for my learning process. So I'm a knitter, I'm a really tactile learner. I learn by doing. I want to touch things. The tangible helps me learn. I've even discovered that I can help myself by engaging my body, and I do that by writing. So it sounds really silly, but I actually write out longhand with an ink pen or a pencil. If I'm feeling rebellious, I'll use a permanent marker, and that just feels like I'm breaking the rules. But I write out all of the steps of what I'm trying to learn, and that act of writing helps me learn. And it takes a long time, and I have to be patient. So that requires focus on my part, that I acknowledge my process. Ellie talks about learning and loving your craft, and that's true. I do love my craft and I do learn a lot. Just when I think I've pretty much learned everything about it, something else, some new discovery or something I didn't know about is presented to me, and I get to go even deeper down the knitting rabbit hole. And I love that. It's vast. I love the constant learning. And even though I have expert knitting skills, there are always things that I can be knitting and adding to my toolbox and new things to discover and experiment with. And I just love that about knitting. Insight through slowness. So this goes back to how I learn using analog tools, books, printed materials, printed patterns, writing what I'm learning, that helps me. So it is not a fast experience. It is a slow, deep experience, and I go deep on my topics. The slowness helps me to digest. It helps me to bring all of those puzzle pieces together. When I am learning in a slow way, I can have my topic that I'm trying to learn is here, but I'm also pulling in things that may be completely unrelated, pulling that information in and adding it to my puzzle piece. And then it becomes a collage. My learning process and my theories, my ideas, are my own personal collage of my personal experiences, the conventional knitting wisdom, and the new things that I'm trying to learn. So it's also individual. Just because these insights through slowness are something that I've developed, if that doesn't work for you, then you can develop ways that work for you. And for you, maybe slow doesn't work, and that's cool, but what does work? Then your challenge is to find what does work. Yeah. So Ellie says, some things cannot be easily rushed. In the maker world, while we don't need to aim for all the perfection of a master, we can remember to slow down into our making as a way to enhance our technique, to better know what is possible within our hands, and to teach us to slow down into the possibilities of our wider life, to perhaps see things as they really are, not as we assume they must be. So for me, that's just the expectation. It's a little bit in opposition of our digital life that is so now. And the gift of having the world at our fingertips through the internet and the information age is in opposition of this slow, patient learning. And they're both tools. We can make them work together in our life in the way that serves us, not that we're a slave to the technology. And for me, that has been a way for me to experience the making my knitting in a different way, in a more wholesome way. And it helps put knitting into the framework of my modern life. So that's everything that we have to talk about today. Join me next week for the next chapter, and I'll see you then.